Hello dear listener, please subscribe to our channel. Enjoy watching. I always thought I was a pretty good judge of character. I mean, I'm not one of those paranoid types who's always checking their partner's phone or following them around. Trust is important, right? Especially in a marriage. At least, that's what I thought, until Emma. We'd been together for almost 12 years. We weren't high school sweethearts or anything, but when we met, something clicked. Emma was an artist, and I'm talking the real deal kind of artist. Not someone who picks up a paintbrush for Instagram likes, but someone who could look at a piece of marble and see a human soul trapped inside it, just waiting to be released. She had this passion for creativity that I couldn't quite understand, but I loved her for it. Her studio was in our basement, and she would spend hours down there, working on her sculptures or paintings, completely lost in her own world. For the first few years, things were perfect. We laughed a lot, we traveled, we were in love. At least, I thought we were. I'm not sure when things changed. I guess it was gradual. She got more distant, but I chalked it up to her being engrossed in her art. You see, when Emma got into a project, she'd disappear mentally for days. I'd find her staring at a lump of clay like it was the only thing keeping the earth spinning. That was just her process, and I respected that. But then she met Matt. Matt was another artist, some guy she met at one of those gallery events she was always dragging me to. I hated those things, but I went because it made her happy. And I liked seeing her light up when she talked about art with other people who got it. Matt was one of those guys. He was younger than me, scruffy in that wannabe bohemian kind of way. You know the type, messy hair, tattoos, talks like he's got the secrets of the universe hidden in his paintbrush. I didn't think much of him at first. I mean, why would I? He was just another artsy dude trying to make it big in the city. But then Emma started mentioning him. A lot. Matt's got this new installation that's really pushing boundaries, she'd say over dinner. Or, I'm going to help Matt set up his gallery next weekend. It's a huge opportunity for him. It was always Matt this, Matt that. I shrugged it off, thinking it was just professional admiration. Artists connect with other artists, right? But then the late nights started. She'd be at the studio, working on her own projects, but I knew better. My gut told me something was wrong. You ever have that feeling? Like, deep down, you know something's off, but you don't want to believe it? Yeah, that was me. I didn't want to believe that Emma, the woman I loved, was slipping away from me. Or worse, slipping into someone else's bed. But the signs were there. The way she'd glance at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. The way she'd smile at those texts, a secret little smile I hadn't seen in months. And then, one night, she came home smelling like wine and guilt. I could smell it on her before she even opened her mouth to explain that she and Matt had stayed late at the gallery, celebrating the success of a show. That night, as she lay beside me, fast asleep, I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. I wasn't the kind of guy who'd just let this slide. No way. I needed proof. Solid, undeniable proof. I wasn't about to accuse her of something without having all my ducks in a row. So, I started digging. Little things at first, checking her phone when she was in the shower, scrolling through her social media when she was in her studio. And sure enough, I found the texts. At first, it was just flirtatious. A couple of wish-you-were-here messages. Innocent enough, but there was an undertone. Then it got worse. One night, she left her phone unlocked, and I saw the photos. Her and Matt, in his studio, in compromising positions that left no doubt in my mind what was going on between them. The rage I felt in that moment, I can't even describe it. It wasn't just anger. It was betrayal. This was the woman I'd shared my life with, and she was screwing some two-bit artist behind my back. But I didn't confront her. No, that would have been too easy. Too predictable. I needed to think this through. I needed to make sure that when I got my revenge, it was something they'd never forget. So, I bided my time. I played dumb. I even started acting more attentive to her, more affectionate, to keep her off the scent. I wanted her to think I had no clue what was going on. And while I was doing that, I started planning. You see, what Emma didn't know was that I'd spent years in the military before we met. I wasn't just some desk jockey. I knew how to get things done, how to set traps, how to execute plans with precision. And I was going to make sure that when I struck, it would be perfect. One weekend, I told Emma I had to go out of town for a business trip. Some client I needed to meet a few states away. She didn't even hesitate. Didn't ask questions. She just smiled and told me to have a safe trip. I could see it in her eyes. She was already planning to spend the weekend with Matt. She thought she had me fooled. Little did she know, I'd been setting her up the whole time. The day I was supposed to leave, I kissed her goodbye, got in my car, and drove down the street. I parked around the corner and waited. Sure enough, about an hour later, I saw her leave the house, dressed up, with that same guilty smile she'd been wearing for weeks. I followed her, keeping my distance. She drove to Matt's place, and they both headed back to our house. My house. The audacity of it still blows my mind. I waited until they were inside before I made my move. While they were getting comfortable, thinking they were safe, I crept around the back of the house and slipped inside. The basement door was open. I knew they'd go down there. It was Emma's favorite space, her creative sanctuary. It was also where I had set my trap. You see, for weeks, I'd been preparing the basement. I knew they'd end up there eventually, so I rigged the place with cameras, motion sensors, and a little surprise that I was sure would get their attention. I had also stocked the room with Matt's artwork, paintings, sculptures, all the crap he thought was groundbreaking. I wanted them to feel comfortable, surrounded by his ego, before I flipped the switch. Sure enough, they made their way down to the basement. I watched from my phone as they started getting cozy, laughing, kissing, completely oblivious to the fact that I was in the house. Once I was sure they were distracted, I activated the trap. The door slammed shut with a loud bang, and they both jumped. Emma looked panicked, while Matt, the idiot, just looked confused. I could see them on the camera feed, running to the door, trying to open it. But it was locked. Then, my voice came through the speakers. Having fun? Emma's face went pale. She knew instantly. Matt, still clueless, looked around like he was trying to figure out what was going on. I know everything, I said. I've known for a while. They started shouting, begging for me to let them out, but I wasn't finished yet. The lights in the room started flickering, and the temperature began to rise. Slowly, at first, just enough to make them sweat. I watched as they started to panic, realizing they were trapped. I let them stew in that for a while, listening to their frantic voices, watching them run around the room like rats in a cage. Then, I cut the power completely. They were plunged into darkness, their voices echoing in the silence. For hours, I let them sit there, in the dark, sweating, terrified, not knowing what was going to happen next. Finally, I opened the door. They stumbled out, gasping for air, thinking it was over. But it wasn't. Not by a long shot. You see, I had recorded the entire thing. Every second of their betrayal, every desperate plea for mercy, every tear they shed in that room. And I sent it to everyone. Emma's family, her friends, Matt's gallery contacts, everyone. Their lives were ruined. Emma lost everything, her career, her friends, her dignity. And Matt? Let's just say his days as a rising star in the art world were over. No one wanted anything to do with him after that. And me? I walked away with my head held high. Revenge is a dish best served cold, and believe me, theirs was frozen solid. If you leave a comment, tell us what you think about the story you heard. It's important to us and will help us find and tell stories that you find interesting. Thank you for watching us.